welcome to the Project Management Body of Knowledge, or PMBOK 7th Edition Bootcamp. My name is Barb Waters, and I will be your trainer today, along with Carl and Dave. We have both of our PMP mentors with us in the classroom. So you've got the team with you today. Welcome, everybody. Hi, Carl. Hi, Dave. And hello, everybody joining us from really around the world. We have a global audience, and what we're going to do is start out with the chat. We're going to talk about the chat and make sure that when you chat, you're chatting to everyone so that we can see where you're joining us from and maybe what time of day it is for you. For me, I'm located in Colorado, and it is 9 a.m. in the morning. And I'm actually outside of my typical office today. So forgive me if we have any type of audio, or it may not be the best video, but Carl and Dave are going to let me know if we have any issues with audio or video, and I have got some backup plans for that. So welcome. I see we've got folks joining from everywhere. This is wonderful. If you don't want to see the chat, if the chat is popping up and creating a problem for you, you can mute that chat. And so you have settings in your Zoom platform there where you can mute it. If you're joining us on replay, welcome to you as well. Thank you for watching the recording, and you can get the transcript of the chat. So we are recording both the session and the chat today. So let's talk about the target audience for our boot camp. Make sure that this is the boot camp that you were looking for. The target audience includes anybody who would like to learn more about a great resource, a fundamental resource for effective project management, no matter what your industry is. This course, though, this bootcamp is not exam prep. I think I may have even seen something in the chat asking about attending for 40 hours. This particular session has to do with the PMBOK 7th edition, which is a publication by the Project Management Institute. This is not an exam prep. This in itself is not a PMP bootcamp. We'll tell you about our PMP bootcamps a little bit throughout today's session, but this particular class is not an exam prep. This is about a book called the PMBOK 7th edition. If you would like to understand this vast body of project knowledge, project management knowledge, the PMBOK Bootcamp is for you. This is the right place. This course is not part of the recommended preparation for the exam. The exam for the PMP is still aligned to the old PMBOK 6th edition. And so if you were curious about that, today's class will not be PMP exam prep. If you are already a PMP, do we have anybody already certified in our group and who is attending today? Okay, I see raised hands. Yeah, this class is great if you want to get a PDU. You can self-report for a PDU for today's session, and I'll show you how to do that today as well. This is not a substitute for reading the actual PMBOK. This is going to be an overview today. So it'll give you a good idea of what's new between the 6th edition and the 7th edition, if you wanted to know more about it. So that's what we're going to cover today in this session. Now, I'd like to launch a poll. We're going to have a few polls through today's session. And so this poll is going to ask you about your bootcamp goals. I'm going to launch the poll. And if you can help us by answering, you can answer more than one as well. Do you want to become PMP certified? Maybe you're interested in PMI publications like the PMBOK Guide. Maybe you're already certified and you want continuing education. Want to learn more about project management, Skillsoft boot camps in general, or other. And if it's an other, maybe you can help us out by chatting what your other bootcamp goal is so that we can see that in the chat. Tell us a little bit more. And I'll give this another moment or so, and then we'll take a look at the answers. Great question in the chat. It just came to all panelists, not to everyone, but I want to share with everybody. Will next week's PMP Bootcamp be based on the PMBOK 6th edition? And the answer will be given today in our class. The exam is still based on the 6th edition. Next week's bootcamp will be based on all of the resources that are necessary to be successful on the exam. The PMBOK is only one of those, the PMBOK 6th edition. So we give a lot of specifics about what you need to read and do to prepare. I'm going to end this poll and share it with everybody now. 69% of you said you want to become PMP certified. That's fantastic. I hope that you will join us in one of our upcoming boot camps. We have the boot camp that begins on Monday at, let's see, that one begins at 10 a.m. Eastern time. It is a true boot camp because we'll be with you for 5 days in a row, full days from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern with an hour lunch in the middle. And that will be trained by, I'll be there along with my counterpart, Orlando Sequeira, and we will be training PMP Bootcamp. We have many other choices though on the schedule that we'll share with you today. Now, if you're asking questions about the boot camp, I would recommend that you put those in the Q&A. If you're asking about PMP exam prep boot camp, please put those in the Q&A for Carl and for Dave, because today's boot camp is actually not about the PMP boot camp, it's about the PMBOK. And so, yeah, use that Q&A for any PMP exam prep related questions, and we'll be happy to help you. I hope you can join us in an upcoming boot camp. So 22% of you are interested in PMI publications like the PMBOK Guide. Welcome. 17% of you are already certified and you want to earn continuing education. We expect today's class to run somewhere around an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on questions. And you can self-report in the PMI website. There's no charge to maintain your certification and to self-report. So if we run 2 hours, that will be 2 professional development units, 2 PDUs. Let's say we run an hour and a half, that would be 1.5. And so you will definitely be able to earn PDUs from today's class. If you want to learn more about project management, this is a great boot camp for you. That's 38% of you. 18, yeah, the poll is over 100% because it was multiple choice. You could choose more than one answer. So some of you may have chosen 2, 3, or more of the choices. 18% of you said you're interested in Skillsoft boot camps in general. And then 5% of you said the other. And learning more about how does a PMBOK 7 compare to some of those things we saw in the PMBOK 6th edition. Great point that you made, Tim, like the process groups, the knowledge areas. The PMBOK Guide 6th edition was very technical. So how does it compare to that? And we will definitely do a side-by-side comparison of both. So I will go ahead and we'll keep moving. Let's talk about the PMBOK Guide. So I'm going to try not to rustle these pages too much here. I know you can hear all of my sound because I'm not using my headset today. And actually, let's go. So I hope now this next poll will be a little easier because I think we've given away a little bit of the answers, but let's do this poll anyway and warm up in these polls. This is a pop quiz. Which of the following is most correct? PMBOK Guide updates lead to PMP exam changes. Is that the case? This is because the PMBOK Guide is the main PMP exam prep book. Is that true? Or is it PMBOK updates and PMP exam updates are not directly related? The updates are caused by other factors. And I think we accidentally have a choice 3 in there. I wouldn't choose that one. So you have those few options available. and let's figure it out together. PMBOK guide updates lead to PMP exam changes, is that true? Or do PMBOK updates and PMP exam changes depend on other factors? So we'll give you a few more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and end the poll and share the results. Okay, let's see if we can, there we go. Share the results. Okay, so 34% of you said that PMBOK guide updates lead to PMP exam changes, and that this is because the PMBOK guide is the main PMP exam prep book. And then about 2/3 of you said PMBOK updates and PMP exam changes are not directly related. And that is the correct answer, that they are not directly related to one another. So the PMBOK 7th edition, the fact that this has come out does not lead to PMP exam changes. These two things are on very different cycles, and they rely on different reasons for them to change. So the PMBOK guide is only one of 10 different references that are used in the exam anyway. So right now the exam is still aligned to the PMBOK 6th edition. The exam is not changing just because we have a 7th edition. We have well, I'll show you all the resources that the exam is based on. It might surprise you. The PMBOK guide is not a study tool. And so the exam is not changing. And the exam updates are based on really important factors. It's just that the PMBOK guide update is not one of them. It's not a driver. And so then you might be wondering, then why not? Why aren't they tied together? Well, PMP exam date updates are actually tied to something completely different called the PMP Role Delineation Study. A role delineation study is conducted every 5 to 7 years. PMI, the Project Management Institute, goes out into our world and asks project managers, tell us about the real tasks that you perform on your job. What is your job really like? And then when they get the results of the survey, and they survey thousands of people, has anybody ever filled out one of these surveys? A role delineation study from PMI? If you haven't, it might be because you're not a PMI member. It could be a variety of reasons, but they ask a lot of us. What do you do in your job as a project manager? They use that information and they compare it to the exam. And then they look for gaps. They do this job task analysis and they realize, oh, we might need to make adjustments. We might need to make some changes to the exam to align better with reality. And that's what they did. Back in 2019, they did this role delineation study. And they learned that actually they were lacking on the exam in a really important area. Does anybody know what that area was? Where a lot of us are starting to use this approach to our projects, but the PMBOK didn't have it. Nice job, Ada, you've got it. Agile. Yeah, and and nice. And if you guess something else, thank you for participating in the chat. But Agile is what they realized they were lacking. They did not have enough of that. So they updated the exam content outline and they incorporated a lot more Agile than we've ever seen before. And so you might be wondering then, what are the updates to the PMBOK guide all about? The PMBOK guide is more of it contains a standard for project management globally. And it is not by itself enough to study for the PMP. It is a great resource, but it doesn't stand alone for all of the things you could be tested on the exam. You ready to see this reference list? You might be surprised. This is the list of documents and publications that PMI says that we should study in order to prepare for the exam. So you'll see The top two are the Agile Practice Guide and a Guide to the Project Management Body of Knowledge. There it is, PMBOK 6th edition. Then followed by 8 additional publications. So it's a pretty long list. Do you want to guess how many pages there are if we put all of those books together cover to cover? What do you think would be the number of pages? Maybe, how did you know? For those of you who said 5,000, you're right. It's just over 5,000 pages. Now, we are not going to be mean to you and say, oh, okay, here we're going to have a PMP Bootcamp next week, and also we want you to read 5,000 pages. No, the benefit of working with Skillsoft and me and Dave and Carl is that we're going to help you to condense or distill this into only what you need to know to be successful on the exam. So we will not recommend that you read all of these books cover to cover. Probably the only one that I actually recommend is the Agile Practice Guide, because it's less than 100 pages and a really reasonable read. It's not that bad. With the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, there are elements of it that are no longer testable. So with the PMBOK 6th, we say, maybe read the first 3 chapters, which are considered the introduction, and then the glossary, the definitions. That's going to be helpful, but the rest, don't bother. We are going to be helping you to distill this into just what you need to know. All right, we have another poll, another pop quiz. So let's do this one. All right. The first edition of the PMBOK Guide was published in what year? 1991, 1996, 2001, or 2006? What do you think? When was the first edition of the PMBOK Guide published? And it didn't say PMBOK first edition, because they probably weren't thinking there would be many, many more. Maybe they didn't realize we'd be on number 7 here in 2021. Okay, so what year was the first edition of the PMBOK Guide published? All right, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So 26% of you said in 1991, 55% of you said in 1996, 16% of you said in 2001. Let me share these results. And 4% of you said it was in 2006. So are you ready for the answer? Let's take a look at all the different editions of the PMBOK Guide. If you said 1996, nice job. That was the first year that a PMBOK Guide was published. So we're talking about, oh, wow, that's quite a while ago, 25 years ago. Did I do my math correctly there? Yeah, and then we had pretty quickly thereafter, you see about every 4 years, there was a bigger gap there between the 4th and 5th. And we tend to be on this cadence now of new PMBOK guides being released about every 4 years. So here we are with the 7th edition. The 7th edition was delayed a little bit. We thought we were going to see it last year, but we didn't. And so this is the history of all the different revisions of the PMBOK Guide. Nice job to those of you who were able to determine it was 1996. With the new version of the PMBOK Guide, this 7th edition, we are now seeing 10 additional languages. So English, but now we've got 10 more languages, and that includes taking the exam in a language. If you are more comfortable taking the exam in a first language for you, you can. And so they're really expanding the reach of the PMBOK Guide globally. And it's good to see that this is happening. So, and I actually worked with a student who took the simplified Chinese version and had really good feedback to say about the exam. So why did they decide, or what did they incorporate when they decided what to change in the PMBOK guide, PMI was listening to a lot of feedback from stakeholders. So number one, they needed the PMBOK to better align with how they were working today. That role delineation study indicated that the PMBOK wasn't really touching on Agile the way it needed to. It started to talk about Agile as far back as the 5th edition. So that was, it was good to see some Agile, but it was like an afterthought. It wasn't incorporated into the heart of the PMBOK guide, and now it is. Our team helps with delivering outcomes. So there's a difference between a deliverable and an outcome. And in the PMBOK guide 6th edition, we see the word deliverable a lot. We see deliverables. What's the difference? What do you think is the difference between a deliverable and an outcome? Let's think about that a little bit. What is the difference between delivering something and releasing it and an outcome? Seems like it should be the same idea. And if you're raising your hand, go ahead and chat. Let us know in the chat. Okay, so results, expected deliverable, actual, what the client ordered. A deliverable is a tangible thing, product or service versus results. I'm seeing a key word here that I love, and I want to grab it from the chat. I think that was you, Jerry. I saw the word value, and that's the key word. Yeah, benefits and value. Good job. You got it. So the difference between a deliverable, which is just a, here you go, this is that product or the product increment. An outcome means that it's usable, it's valuable, it fulfills a need or solves a problem. And that's a big difference between the new approach and the PMBOK 6th approach, which was all about deliverables. We also need to be able to quickly adapt to changes in the market. We know that. I'm sure that many of you had disrupted projects in the last year and a half to 2 years. It's been challenging, and sometimes we have to be able to move quickly and not have too much work in progress that has to go back and change again and again. And then teams need to be able to identify the right delivery approach for them. And that could be predictive, it could be adaptive, it could be a hybrid, which means a little of each. And that's key. So we need to make sure that our teams have something to choose from that will work for them, and that there's the ability to tailor. So this stakeholder feedback became a really big part of the drive to change the PMBOK guide for the 7th edition. So we are now in a state of permanent whitewater. Have you ever heard this term before? Permanent whitewater? It's like, what does that mean? If you know about rafting on a river, when we raft on a river, it can be really calm. Living in Colorado, we do have whitewater rafting, and I know there are places around the world that have whitewater rafting. And sometimes the water can be really calm. Permanent chaos is a perfect way of describing it. Yes, exactly. So we can't really say, let's wait until things calm down and then we'll get back to our plan again, because our plan may not work anymore. And it's the speed of change that we live in today with artificial intelligence, with the cloud. We have new business models. Some of us work virtually. Some of us will work virtually from now on, even if we didn't before. So our teams are distributed globally. And this idea of permanent whitewater or ongoing chaos, we have to figure out how to navigate that kind of project environment actively and not just become passive, because just like in whitewater rafting, you can't sit there in the raft and let the current take you. you will bump into everything. You'll bump into impediments, which are rocks or branches, and you just can't, you're not able to do that. So we can't do it with our projects either. We have to actively navigate a chaotic project environment, and the PMBOK 7 will give us some tools to do that, especially with Agile now. Okay, time for another poll. We've got another pop quiz coming up. Here we go. Which of the following is correct or most correct? This one has 2 questions in it. The PMBOK guide is the standard for project management, or the PMBOK guide and the standard for project management are 2 different documents published together in one book. The PMBOK guide, this is number 2. The PMBOK guide is the project management body of knowledge, or the PMBOK guide is a guide to the project management body of knowledge. That's a very subtle difference. Both of these are, you might be thinking, what's the difference? What does it really matter? So I'll explain, but let's take a few more seconds to answer that question, see how we do. So is the PMBOK guide the standard for project management, or are they 2 different publications, the PMBOK guide and the standard, that go together? And then which of the following is most correct? The PMBOK guide is the project management body of knowledge, or it's a guide to the project management body of knowledge? I'll end the poll in 3, 2, 1. End that poll, share the results. So 41% of you said that the PMBOK guide is the standard. 59% of you said that they are 2 different publications. If you said they're 2 different publications, you are correct. We'll see the details on that in the next slide. The PMBOK guide is the project management body of knowledge, or it's a guide to the project management body of knowledge. 38% of you said it is the project management body of knowledge. I thought so too. I always thought the PMBOK is the project management body of knowledge, but in fact, it's a guide to the project management body of knowledge, and I'll explain the difference between those. So let's look at this. The guide to the project management body of knowledge, or the PMBOK guide, and the standard for project management are 2 different publications, and they're published together. Every few years, PMI decides which one will come first. So in the past, we always saw the PMBOK and then the standard. In this new edition, we see the standard and then the PMBOK. And it doesn't really matter what the order is, but they are 2 different publications bound together and sold together. And the other thing that's interesting that I have not paid much attention to in the past was that it is a guide to the project management body of knowledge. How big do you think the project management body of knowledge is? The actual body of knowledge that we can go out and benchmark against, or explore, or investigate, or interview key subject matter experts, or go learn tools and techniques. How big do you think that body of knowledge is for project management? It's not pages, right? It's not, the body of knowledge is all of us. You have it, I have it, Dave and Carl are part of it. So everybody who is a practitioner in project management contributes to the body of knowledge. It's infinite. It is every tool or technique we could think about using. It includes the tools and techniques that are just being invented or thought about today. It includes things we've been working on since the start of project management too. So the PMBOK isn't designed to be everything and the all-inclusive body of knowledge. It's more like a map that's supposed to point us to where we should go. So hopefully that helps a little bit, that it's a guide to help us best utilize this gigantic body of knowledge. So something to kind of keep in mind. And then the standard and PMBOK are published together. So if you didn't get that right, don't worry. Please don't worry. I've been teaching this for a long time and I didn't know those two subtle differences for a long, long time, but it is helpful to know. So let's take a page by page preview of the PMBOK guide and just look at it page by page. So we've got these little, this little group of pages before they actually officially start counting, you know, the Roman numerals, the introductory kind of pages. So that includes things like the title, table of contents, tables of contents, because it's got one for the PMBOK guide and one for the standard. There's also a list of where you can find the different figures and tables throughout the guide. So that's kind of all in that little intro. And then the standard comes first. So that's pages 1 through 59. And behind the standard, there is a list of references and also an index. And then we start counting over again, because it's a different book in there. A guide to the project management body of knowledge, the PMBOK 7th edition, is pages 1 through 195. And then it's followed by a very lengthy references, appendix, and glossary, and then also an index. Is anybody here in the PMBOK guide? Did anybody review any of the content and give feedback to PMI? You're allowed to do that. I don't know if you knew that, but anytime PMI is looking at releasing a new publication, they will always have an exposure draft. So many of us will in the industry will review and give feedback. And it's kind of a nice thing to contribute. You also can claim PDUs or continuing education for doing that. So it could be really worthwhile. Okay. So let's talk about the standard and then the guide as two separate things. It's smaller. Does anybody have your PMBOK guide, 7th edition? Is there anybody who actually had? You do? Okay, you do. Does it? And if you had the 6th edition, did you notice that it's smaller? It's noticeably smaller, isn't it, than the PMBOK 6th edition? It is a much smaller book. And I'll explain the reason why, because it's not designed to go all by itself. And I think you'll learn a little bit more surprise. We'll have more surprises today about the PMBOK guide and how it is to be used with other resources. So we'll talk about that. Let's talk about the standard a little bit and what's inside these 59 pages. So the standard contains an introduction, and then it talks about a system for value delivery, as well as project management principles. So yeah, it is. That's a great way of putting it. It's smaller, but there's some hidden depth in it. I agree with that. Yeah, so it's a system for value delivery. Now, a standard, it doesn't necessarily give you tools and techniques. It's more about our values and our principles. So when we look at the standard, this includes a set of principles that guide our behavior. And it's about our mindset and values when we are working in project management. It's not really talking about our how or our processes. It's more about our attitudes about project management. And it's about being good project managers, not just doing project management. So let's talk about that value delivery system. So organizations expect projects to deliver outcomes in addition to outputs and artifacts. And this is part of that intro in the standard, what PMI is telling us. Project managers are expected to deliver projects that create value for the organization and for the stakeholders. And so there's this system of value delivery. And the system of value delivery is much more than outputs. So if you equate outputs with the old way where we would say deliverables, that is early in the value stream. Just because we produce something doesn't mean that the customer has a good experience with it, that they're satisfied with it, that it adds value. So we need to make sure that what we do leads to outputs, outcomes, and eventually value. That's part of value delivery, and that's a fundamental concept in the standard for project management. Have you ever had one of those days? I definitely have, where you say, I worked so hard today, but I don't really know if I accomplished anything. And I know we all have those days where it just feels like I'm so busy, but I don't know if anything came out of all the busy work I did. That's activities, and we need to draw alignment between our effort and actually delivering value. So that's all about value delivery. The principles, there are 12 of them. And so quite a bit. We have stewardship. Stewardship is about being a diligent, respectful, and caring steward. And what we mean by that, or what PMI means by that, is when we're working with a team, when we're working with documents, artifacts, stakeholders, when we're guiding that process, we need to be respectful of the people, of the process, and of the artifacts that we're using. I'll give you an example. Sometimes it's easier if you see an example of what is not good stewardship to help you understand what is good stewardship. So if we were managing a project and we didn't do a very good job of collecting lessons learned, documenting our processes, creating good templates, and we kind of left a mess and no good record of our project, that would be poor stewardship. If we are taking care and really overseeing the process responsibly, that would be good stewardship. Team, we need to create a collaborative project team environment. What do you think is the opposite of that? What would be the opposite of collaboration in a project team? Any ideas of examples of that? Oh yeah, sabotage for sure. Silos, yeah. Top-down management is also a really good example. And silos are working independently and not communicating with one another. These are great examples. So instead, we need to communicate, collaborate, and sometimes look at where we might have dependencies across our work to make sure that we are playing nicely together. Stakeholders, effectively engaging with stakeholders. What do you think could be the opposite of that if we weren't embracing that principle of stakeholders? What would that look like? Give you a chance to misalignment, lack of sponsorship, expectations not aligned with stakeholder needs. Right, absolutely. Maybe not, I like that, not utilizing our stakeholders or ignoring them. Stakeholders have so much to contribute to projects. I want to catch up with these chats, they're great. Not integrating them into the team, right? Only using them in theory, meaning we talk the talk. We say, oh, stakeholders are important to us, but then we don't ask for their feedback. Right, good. Only listening to ourselves and what we think. Perfect. Value, focus on value. This we saw just a moment ago, so we won't elaborate on that too much. The difference would be saying, I did a lot of work today. These are all the tasks I completed, and assuming that that means it's successful and that we've created value. So focusing on value by shifting toward outcomes. Systems thinking. So recognize, evaluate, and respond to system interactions. What would the opposite of that look like? Systems thinking, we not thinking in the way that our customers use our products and services. Maybe we don't actually go through the steps that our customer goes through to feel their pain points. not understanding how there can be roadblocks or impediments to the customer as they navigate our products and services, right? Not analyzing. So that can be problematic. Yeah, we don't create value. All right. Oh, there's a question that came in through the Q&A about one of our upcoming principles that I'll get to in a moment. This is really good. It's the 11th one, so we'll get to it in a moment. Leadership, I think we know now there's definitely overlap in some of these principles. So we know now that leadership, just being a top-down leader, no collaboration would be problematic. It kind of goes hand in hand with collaborative project environments with the team principle. Tailoring based on context. For those of you who were familiar with the PMBOK 6th edition, what did it lack in terms of tailoring? And it's okay if you don't know or you aren't familiar with the 6th edition, but that was one of the gaps that it had. It didn't have tailoring available. Oh, I like that. I like that comment. Focusing on value avoids gold plating. That's a quality term. Yeah, what does value mean? That's a good point you made. Okay, tailoring, yeah. So maybe we need to integrate different models together. Maybe our way of working is different than any other organization's way of working. And if we are just going to prescribe, thank you. This is so good. More process oriented. That's exactly what the problem was with the 6th edition, is that it named these processes and it said, okay, you need to do these in a certain order. And then when you're done with this step, it feeds into this next step. And you go through 49 processes in order to bring a project from the start to the finish. But that really based on that role delineation study, PMI learned that there were a lot of organizations that did not perform their projects in that way. And that it was one size fits all. And that just doesn't work. Yeah. So more tailoring, less prescribing, quality, build quality. Oops. Let me see if I can minimize that. There we go. Build quality in. What's the difference between building quality in and using quality as more of an afterthought? What is the difference between those two? What does it mean to build quality in? It's proactive. Yes. Preventive measures. Excellent. Yes. So the whole way we have confidence in the solution. Quality is not an afterthought. We don't decide, okay, we're going to build the product and then we'll test it. We're going to build the product in a way that incorporates quality in every step that we do. Good. Yes. So not just quality control at the end, testing the deliverable, but our processes will be part of it. How we do the project work will be part of it too. I love that. Quality doesn't mean that we just examine things and fix them afterward. Good point. Complexity. So navigating complexity, I'll give you a little bit, this one is a little bit hard, but navigating complexity means that you're going to have a tool belt from now on. And what you're going to be able to do is decide what is your situation and where do you need help, guidance, or best practices. And you're going to be able to go to that tool belt and select the right tool that will work for your project. So even if you are in this constant whitewater or chaos situation, you can still navigate that because you're going to be able to react in the moment, not always plan driven. Risk. So we'll optimize our risk responses. That's something we've always done in traditional project management. We had a really comprehensive risk management section in the PMBOK all before and for a long time. But now we're going to be able to optimize our risk responses even more by incorporating some agile options, so that if we're in an environment that's constantly shifting and changing, we can create products a little bit faster and we can react a little bit faster to risk. And because part of risk is we created a really big plan and now our environment shifted and we can't execute the plan. So all of that was wasted and we have to go back. And so we can minimize that. Question here, and let's see, shouldn't we assume complexity equals difficulty? A bunch of simple tasks in a dynamic environment can be a complex situation. Yes. So complexity could equal that each task by themselves may not be difficult. Like you said, they're simple, but now we create a dynamic environment. We've added complexity to the situation. And what makes it complex is dependencies between those simple tasks or changing environments, communication challenges. So I'm glad you brought that up. A dynamic environment can make even simple tasks complicated, really complicated. So we're going to try to address that. A question earlier about adaptability and resiliency. And the question was, isn't that agile? I feel like I see the word agile in there. And you're right. Agile is absolutely using adaptability. So being able to adapt the plan very quickly in, say, less than a month at a time is how far we would detail a plan. We aren't going to have, we'll definitely have strategy at our company or enterprise level. All companies do. They have a strategic plan of where the company is going to head in the next 3 to 5 years. That's pretty normal, maybe even 10 years. But what are we going to do in the next 2 weeks or in the next month? What we'll be working on, that part we're going to keep pretty flexible and adaptable to make sure we work on things that deliver value. And yes, great question in the chat. Is there a link to the slide deck? There most certainly is. We have and this is in the channel in Percipio under resources. That's the first place we recommend that you look, is in the resources tab. And let me bring that over right now, just to show you the 2 places where you can get our resources from. So I'll drag this over. This is Percipio. And if you're joining us through Percipio, that's great. It looks like I'm logged out. Let's get back in. And when you are logged in, which I should be momentarily here, we're going to go navigate to this particular boot camp. There we go. Library. And then under library from the top, we'll go to Skillsoft boot camps. And this is a project management boot camp. And then within our project management boot camps, you'll find us. We actually have this one housed under the PMP. I think it's in the October cohort. So it's hiding a little bit, but this is where you can go. PMP ATP Bootcamp October. And then here we are, we're live in the 7th edition. And then from there, we can go to the resources tab and you'll find the syllabus as well as the slide deck for today. I recommend Percipio because it tracks everything you do, which is really nice. But if you are not able to get into Percipio, that's okay. Instead, you can go here and under our Bootcamp 7th edition, Carl has chatted, I think Carl and Dave chatted the link for you there for SharePoint. Thank you for doing that. Perfect. And then if that sometimes that little question mark at the end of the link can cause a problem. I'm not sure why, but I've noticed that in that SharePoint link that Dave just chatted, If you just eliminate the question mark through those characters at the end and end with the 8W, it'll work if it's giving you problems. I'm not sure why that would be. I think it's a redirect or something. So that's how you can get the links to the documents. And for those of you who do not have Percipio, but you're interested, you can actually access a trial. So this is what you would do if you wanted to check us out in a trial. I'll chat that. And we'd love for you to try out Percipio if you aren't joining us with Percipio today, if you're joining through a different platform. And so we'll pick up with these last two principles and then we'll keep moving. So adaptability and resiliency. It is all about not planning so far in advance that we can't easily shift. So adaptability, keeping things lightweight, and yes, that has agile written all over it. Resiliency means that if something changes around us, it doesn't devastate our project or our plans. And that's at a personal level too, resiliency. I like to think that I'm resilient, but every now and then too many changes might happen. And then all of a sudden I kind of feel like, I just want to stay home today. I don't want to go out and navigate the complicated world today because it's so unpredictable, or this or that will happen, whether it's weather, whether it's technology challenges and all those things. We have to be resilient at the team and individual level and at the project level. And then finally, change. And that does go hand in hand with resiliency. Enable change to achieve the envisioned future state. Do we have any BAs in the class? Business analysts in the group? Maybe you have a certification or experience. There you are, our BAs. Okay, raised hands and in the chat, welcome. So you know all about change because one of the fundamentals about business analysts and business analysis is to move from current state to future state and to facilitate change in an organization. So we are seeing that not just change in our projects now, but also looking at the strategy level. And that's something new that we haven't seen necessarily in previous PMBOK guides. Okay, that is the standard. And what I'm going to do right now, because it does help us to process the recordings a little bit better, I'm going to stop the recording and restart it. And when we restart it, we're going to be talking about the next step, which is, or the next document, which is the PMBOK guide. So let's stop that recording